Hey, welcome to the Creative Marketing Cut, where we slice through the boring to bring out the brilliant. I'm your host, Evan Renfro, here to navigate you through the maze of marketing, creativity, and strategy. Our goal is to pack every episode with invaluable insights and practical takeaways for those of you who are ready to apply these tips. We'll skip past the industry stale dry jargon and uncover the crafty and creative side of marketing. And no, this isn't just a marketing podcast for those that are obsessed with marketing. This is for those of you who want a few tips on how to use it. Hey Matthew, so first just thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. I know we have similar industries that we work within. I've seen your content for a bit. I'm excited to jump in and chat with you. So to get started, just tell me a little bit about what you do, who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Matthew Gattozzi, and I'm the founder of Goodo Studios. We create content for consumer brands. So we're really focused on, direct to consumer brands, and we are working with them to build out their creative strategy, meaning who is their customer, why are they buying, which creates the intention behind why we create what we create. Then we actually go and shoot all of the ads, the photos, and things like that. But then we also on the back end are looking at the data to say, how can we make this ad a little bit better? How can we improve things? So we want to feel like an in-house creative team for brands without actually being in-house.
I love it. Yeah, you're speaking to my soul. Like the things that you touched on that I love so much are like, it's calibrated, right? It's congruent with the client you're serving, with that brand. So it speaks to their ideal audience. It speaks to that consumer that they resonate with. And then you're doing it in a creative way. I know that, probably like we probably appreciate good branding and good advertising just because that's the space that we operate within. But I'll say like, that's something that I think it really, I think, can punch beyond its weight class a bit if done well. So kind of like with that framing, what are your thoughts on like what makes a good creative branding piece?
Yeah, so the first thing, and I kind of mentioned this, is like you got to know who you're talking to. I think a lot of times people, when they think about coming up with an ad or something like that, they're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about how the company is the hero, or, it's all about us and we got to share what we do or how we can help people or what our product does. But you're not really like thinking about like who's receiving this ad. And so I think it really starts there. And there's plenty of other things beyond that, but I think most people, when you look at the ads that you see out online or even on TV, don't even get through that step first. So I think like just focusing in on who is your customer, why are they buying from you, why would they buy from you, is really, really key to like think about, and that can help you build, again, the intention behind why you're creating what you're creating, but it can also influence how you actually go and create. So if your ideal customer is a 50-year-old woman, why do you have a 20-year-old girl on camera? Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So again, like you just need to know like who is your actual consumer, who is actually your customer, and that can really open up maybe how you would talk to somebody, why you would talk to somebody. It just changes. So really start there, and then there's plenty of other steps after that. But I think most people don't even get that step right. So that's probably the biggest problem that I see in advertising right now.
That's so good. Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartely with that. It's like if you miss the mark on the audience, like the rest of it's almost just irrelevant at that point because it's not going to land. And I'm a big believer in that because like obviously with everything production oriented, when the fun begins, right, when the cameras are rolling and kind of the magic is happening, so to speak, like in my approach, or at least where I kind of sit in this, this camp is everything from the objective should inform all of the creative, right? So everything, like you mentioned, it's the ideal audience, it's the ideal consumer. Who are we trying to reach? What point are we trying to make? What problem are we trying to solve? All of those things help to inform, again, the creative side, the artistry. Like if we're trying to evoke some emotion or some response or some outcome, well, then now we kind of have a bit of a framework to operate within. And I think like that is what allows us the freedom to be creative because we know the colors on the canvas that we're using, right? So no, I love that approach. And again, I've seen some of your work and it's phenomenal. And I love the way that you, like you said, you drive home like who it's for. Like it always seems to be like on par with the person that it's intended to reach, at least from the perspective that I've seen. So yeah, again, kind of as I sit in this space of like, I love the creative, you know, I have a heart for the artistry. What would you say maybe are some opportunities that even someone who wouldn't consider themselves naturally a creative, what can they do to maybe spice up some of their content? Let's assume they have the persona established, they've got the objective, and it's aligned with the right person. How can they kind of like make it a little bit more creative or put some artistry in it, even if that's not their natural setting?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things you can think about, or how you can frame content, is think about having a one-on-one conversation, just kind of like how we are right now. And let's say I'm the business owner that you're kind of talking about, somebody who doesn't feel creative or whatever. And you ask me like, hey, what do you do? And, you know, I start telling you what I do. And I start to see how you react. I see your eyes light up. I see your eyes glaze over, kind of get bored as I'm talking and kind of pitching you what I'm doing. Start there. I think a lot of people like are so focused on this like online world that they forget that like content is really just a one-on-one conversation at scale. So learn how to talk about your product, your service, your business there. That will actually stimulate a lot of interesting ways to come up and communicate. Like, I think people, they just say like, oh, I'm not creative, so I can't create content. Well, really, it's about being an effective communicator, which is a skill that anybody can learn. You don't need to know how to video edit to do that. Now, is it valuable to like have that? Like, yeah, you may be able to do more with video editing skills, but like really at the core of it, you need to be a great communicator. And if you want to practice that, practice one-on-one conversations and practice writing. Video is just a visual interpretation of a written like script or a written, post or something like that. Yeah, there's more elements to it, but at the core of it, it is great writing. So just practice writing. Those two things, if you can do those, which ultimately helps you become a great communicator, then you can do content. Like, get other people to help you be like, do the creative, like the more like interesting shots or like how to edit it or whatever. But those people are not going to help you be a great communicator. So just focus in on there. If you already know your persona, have customer calls, talk to those people, start pitching them, seeing what like lights up for them, then start to learn how do you communicate that in many different ways. When you start doing all of that, you start to see the world in a different way, because then you start to connect like experiences back to what you're doing. So I'm constantly like bringing ideas or things that I'm seeing in the world back to how do I communicate content. But that's because I'm very clear on what I'm trying to communicate right now. So that really helps. So those are the things that I would say. And I didn't mention anything about editing. I didn't mention anything about, go on YouTube and learn how to shoot. No, I said, learn how to write and learn how to talk. Like those two things, if you can do that, the actual content in the quote unquote creative comes easily.
That's so good. I love that. It's like I don't know who to attribute it to, but that quote, like, he who tells the best story wins. Right. Like,
I love that.
It's like
yeah.
such core, like essential. It's an ingredient that I think is critical to an effective message, regardless of the modality. So I agree with you entirely. Whether it's text copywriting, whether it's a caption that corresponds with a photo, whether it's a full production. Like, if your messaging and your foundational like elements that you're communicating are unclear, or if they're not directed, then I think, we lose people along the way, no matter how pretty and polished it may be. So I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And it's exciting to hear, I think, for the person that maybe doesn't feel like they're naturally creative. Ironically enough, I didn't even consider myself as someone who would be like creative until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I grew up thinking that people that were in theater and in the plays, like that they were the ones that were creative and that I wasn't. But it's funny that, I think as I've kind of grown in my appreciation for the space, and then as a discipline and as a vocation for me, like, you learn that it's more of a curated approach. It's the things that we take in, much like you said, right? It's like, where are you gleaning things from life, from the day to day? And maybe they get embedded, and later they kind of create a net new idea. But it's like this blend and this mesh of different things, because again, to your point, right? If you know this is the box that I'm trying to fill, this is the packaging for the person for whom it's intended, then I can take ingredients from different places and make a new dish of something to be enjoyed. So, yeah, I love that, and I think that it's so cool, because I know you're in the brand space, you're in products. I tend to more so focus on services and businesses, so it's kind of like it's a little bit different, like presentation. It's less focused on something that might be tangible, and it's more focused on kind of value proposition.
Yeah.
But it's the same core ingredients, right?
It's all the same principles. It's all the same motivation. Like, yeah, if it's B2B, it's like, yeah, but there's a consumer buying it, right? There's still a human buying it, right? So what the motivations and stuff, they're different because they're in a different setting or context, but it's all the same thing. You still need to be able to grab their attention because they're busy, right? Like, people like running their own business, other service businesses, they're busy doing their services. They're busy doing their thing, right? Just as much as like consumers are just, they've got their attention. They're, going and doing their own thing. So how do you grab their attention? How do you speak directly to their needs and what they're feeling internally, or maybe even hit on things that they didn't even know that they were feeling? Yeah. And then being able to compel them to action, whether that's to book a call, buy a product, sign up for a service, whatever it is. All of those principles are literally the same thing. It's going to look a little different, of course. Yeah. The outside packaging will, but principles and how you want to think about things is all the same.
Exactly. Yeah, and I love that you hit on that, because again, it goes back to like what you said before, like, effectively, if you have the cadence and if you have kind of the core of what you're trying to present, it almost informs everything else, right? Like, how to speak to the things they need. You know how to speak to the things, like you said, that they might not even be aware of, but you know how to articulate it in a way that they feel it. It resonates. What are some things kind of, I know we're kind of on the cusp of like, as we always are, but new technology and things being, it seems like they're reiterating at rapid speed, much faster than in what I've experienced in my lifetime. So kind of with that, like with changes and with advancements, what do you see on the horizon that might make someone feel more equipped to do some of these things?
So I feel like with AI and technology, let's just like talk about technology. Like, I think like the ease of creation is a lot easier, like we've got our phones, we can shoot, the cameras are pretty great nowadays on a phone. You have like a lot more simple of edits. Like, you don't need to know Adobe Suite to be able to actually put a video together. There's more simple edit. So technology itself has made the ease of creation a lot easier, point blank. Now, the thing right now with AI is that I think what's happening is, I don't know if this will be controversial, but I think the people that are excited about AI are not like creative people, or are like people who are not like actually able to create. And so what I mean by that is, people who are already bad communicators, they're like, oh, this is great. Like, the AI can communicate for me. Like, it can do the writing for me. And it's like, that's like fine. Like, technically it can output some text for you. Like, this is true. I don't think that it's at a level that it's compelling though. And I think what's going to make people really stand out, if everybody has that capability, if everybody is now able to output a certain amount of text, what's going to make you different? It's not going to be your special prompt. It's going to be being able to be human and to speak to another human. So the thing that I think is interesting that people forget is that AI is built on rules, okay? The best art for centuries has always been an artist learning the current format of art, impressionism, whatever it is, and then they break that rule and they set the new standard of what art could be. So AI cannot break rules. It only runs by rules. But what makes great art, everything that makes great marketing always broke best practices, broke the rules, was able to be original. AI is not original. It's following patterns. If you want to stand out, you want to learn how to break those patterns. So why do I say all of this? I say all of this because people think that they're going to now not have to learn how to write. They think that they're not going to have to learn how to create videos or this or that. But the best people will be the ones that understand they have great taste. They've been able to curate things. They've been able to understand how to imagine great creation, right? Like great creative people are not afraid of AI replacing their jobs because they're like, great, we can do this even easier, even better. Like think about all the amazing things that I can do right now, right? Whereas like the people who are like enthusiastic that they are going to like, oh, I can like downsize costs or I don't have to do as much work, like all this stuff, like those people are not going to make it because like there is no competitive advantage there. So I'm actually really bullish on now is the time to learn how to write. Now is the time to learn how to understand what compels people to make action, take action. Now's the time to learn how did that company or this service like break the rules and how they did marketing, because people are like, AI is going to make everybody equal. Awesome. But then how are you going to stand out? AI is not going to make you stand out. So those are the things like technology has allowed us to ease into creation a lot better, which is awesome. But I think the early adopters of AI are going to forget, like, you need to know what great writing is to approve that piece. And if you don't know what great writing is, how are you supposed to know what AI puts out is good or not? Like, you're going to trust the rules? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I love that. So it's funny. I kind of have a very similar view in terms of like, it's not going to take you from, having no skill to being world class in something, right? Like it's not going to like just like impress those abilities upon you with no effort. You have to learn the art. Like you said, you have to learn the tools, the discipline, the space, and then be able to kind of like fashion together your own. We look at someone who has like good taste, right? Taste makers. And it's they understand that area well enough to be able to say yes to this and no to that. And I love it for the reason of like maybe the tasks that are redundant, right? The things that aren't inherently creative, or the things that are a little bit more of just kind of like the repeated, maybe it's like all the front end and back end, like organization of files or formatting thing, like for that. And if it can get us out of being bogged down with all of the like monotonous tasks, and we can focus more of our capacity on like the creative, right? The things that are within our sphere and within our will of influence. And I think like absolutely incredibly advantageous to buy back time. But yeah, I think that there's a weird misconception about like, oh, well, I'm just miraculously going to be like, a leading expert in this thing that I've never done before in my life because of the power of like robots or something, right? It's so it's kind of it's a fun take on it. But I'm glad.
If I could just jump in there, I think that AI does a really great job of boiling down a lot of information and streamlining that. So you could take a lot of big data and be able to read through the lines and build trends. It is going to open us and give us more time. I do think, though, that if you don't build your creative muscle, that is the thing that's going to only, like, finance will eventually be on. Like, so many of these very, like, manual things are going to be automated. Now, even but finance people won't go away, but the best people the people that will succeed are creative. And this goes back to one thing that you said earlier, which is you said, I didn't feel like I was creative until like 4 years ago. And I think the issue is that people say, I'm not creative. Like, oh, I'm not that. I'm an engineer. I'm not creative. And they write it off. But the best engineers are creative, because you have to be a problem solver. You have to think beyond what you see currently. Yeah. Therefore, you are creative, right? Like, so I think when people tell themselves that they're not creative, they are the one, like, they are almost hurting themselves, especially because like you're not going to be able to do the automated task and have a job like that. You're like, the only thing that's going to last in the future will be creativity. Being able to look at the finances and be creative and say, how can we cut costs? How can we be more profitable? Using like the automation of data. Like, yeah, now you don't have to go into Excel and do all this stuff, but you still have to be able to like understand what's happening to then make a decision, right? And same is true with creative. It's like, yeah, maybe the ease of production is going to be a lot easier, but you still need to go out and create. You still need to be creative. Like people are like, oh, like movies are going to be replaced. It's like, yeah, but like you still have to want to go make a movie. Like how many people like want to go make a movie? Like, yeah, you could type some things in, but like you still have to be able to weave in all of those things together. So it's like maybe the ability to do it or ability to do anything will be, bar none, which is awesome. Because the capabilities of people are going to be, untouchable. The thing that's going to make them stand out, though, will be their creativity. And that's the thing that needs to be developed. And everybody is creative. They just have to first tell themselves that and develop it in their own way. So internally, I have a rule of like, hey, everybody is a creative. Everybody is an artist. Whether they're doing finances, they're my chief of staff, they're all creative. That's like kind of how I see it. And I want everybody that works at Goodo and beyond to know that they're an artist. They just need to see themselves as that.
Yeah, I love that. It's a refreshing perspective, right? And like I say, I'm glad that the barrier to entry has been lowered because it evens the playing field of accessibility. But I don't think, like you said, I don't think that replaces the need for the skills, for the hard skills, for the ability to take something and fashion it into your own, or to be able to take a problem and be innovative and creative enough to find an ideal solution. So in the marketplace, I'm always drawn to something that feels fresh and original. It feels authentic. It feels real. And I know that's, what I perceive those things to be is very subjective about what I like, right? But the framing, at least, and this touches on, what you said before about it matches the audience, it matches intent.
Yeah.
Whenever it is in the frame of marketing, when it's in the frame of like what we're putting out to kind of signal, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is who we're for, where do you see maybe opportunities that maybe they're left on the table in terms of like that creativity or that innovative approach?
I would say that the opportunities that are missed is just doubling down on what works. Like I think that, we're talking about technology and stuff, but honestly, don't get distracted. Like you don't need all of these things. You don't need to be on all channels. You don't need to be everywhere all the time. Like, whatever. Like, what is like the core channel that like you're getting your customers from? Double down there first, like don't try to be on all 8 platforms and running ads and sending postcards and doing all this stuff. Like over time, when your business grows, like you can do that. But like also, I think that too many people, like something's working and they're like, oh, like now I'll go to this next channel and I'll build it up to be the exact same thing. And it's like, that might not actually be the case. Like the channel might not actually be better and you're missing out on just doubling down on the channel that works. Now, again, you always want to like diversify and like not, have all your eggs in one basket. But at the same time, like sometimes doubling down and, going all in can be the difference maker, right? So you got to have conviction there on that channel. But the point is that I think a lot of people just spread their resources and their time so thin that they're, that's the missed opportunity. And I see that even in myself, like, it's funny because you talked about, I've seen your content for a while. It's like, yeah, the stuff that's worked is like Twitter and LinkedIn. Like, do I want to do YouTube? Do I want to do some other things? Yeah, sure, I do. But this year I just said, what worked last year, we're doubling down on that. We're going to do more of those things. Yeah, we're trying to do a few other channels and try and do other things. But my focus is like, all right, I'm just going to 2x the things that I was doing last year that worked, right? Because it would be a missed opportunity to focus somewhere else and then give that channel that was working so well less time almost. So I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They get caught up in the AI, they get caught up in the new channel, the new this, the new that, and I think it just distracts them mainly.
That's good. It's like sticking to the core, right? Like, I've heard this analogy of you've heard the framing of like shiny objects, right? Like shiny
Yep.
object syndrome. You chase the new thing, but there's this analogy, and I'm going to paraphrase it because it's kind of lengthy, but effectively it's like you're on a remote island and you need to get across to the other island, and this crate comes down and it's got all the materials that you would need to build a boat. So you start working on this boat, and then about halfway through it, the plane comes back over, drops another crate, and it looks like it's a nicer boat. So you abandon that project to go pursue the next boat that seems to be better. And that same thing happens a few times over and over again. But if you would have just stayed with the first boat, you'd be off the island and onto the next island already. But since you keep abandoning the thing to go chase the new one, you're no further ahead than you were. So it's a weird kind of like scenario, but the visual aspect of it has always stuck with me. It's like, yeah, that may be something that could potentially have promise, but I do know that I'm, whatever percentage further in this thing that I'm doing now than I was, when I first began. So I'd be effectively starting over to go pursue something new. And like the ability to say no is something that like, it's tough because everything looks shiny, it looks new, it looks exciting. And knowing which things to pursue and which things to kind of like keep off your plate, I agree. I think that's a great skill set to have.
That's a great visual, by the way. I'll just to call that out. That's a great visual. That's got me. I was kind of in my thoughts there, like just thinking about that. But that's a great visual because I think in that visual, the way I see it is sometimes your business might be growing, right? So that's like the bigger boat almost sometimes too. But you realize like you haven't actually like it's so fragile sometimes because like the revenue and everything might be growing, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna go to this next thing, we're gonna do this next thing, but you realize like, wait, the fundamentals are not there. Like you haven't actually left yet. Like, yeah, the boat's getting bigger, but it's still broken. You're still trying to patch it up versus like, let's take this one thing and actually move to the actual next step, right? The next step is not always like the bigger business. It could be something else or whatever, right? So sometimes there's vanity metrics that also distract us. That could be revenue. That could be views. It could be certain things, followers, whatever. So it kind of just depends, but that visual is not just about the new channel. It can also be like about revenue. It could also be about a few other things. So that's a powerful, I'm going to use that. I'm stealing that from you, Evan. That's a good one. I like it.
It's funny. I can't remember. I heard it from someone else and I can't remember where I heard it.
Well,
but it's always
for me, you're the original to me. So I'll just say, it's all from Evan. So I love it.
I'll take it. Yeah. It's like, it's one of those things that it's a good reminder. And I love how you said it's not just specific to platform, because in the same sense, like we want to be progressing, we want to be growing, we have to be, right? Or we're dead in the water. But at the same time, like it takes a disciplined like eye and ability to sit in and kind of evaluate things, maybe with a team of people that are trusted and have good influence, but you need to look at this as a what is most prioritized or what is most important. But yeah, I love that analogy, and I always come back to it whenever there's a new opportunity presented, and it's like it could be worth pursuing, but that means I would have to abandon the thing that seems most ideal and most promising.
And I know you're going to ask a question, but I'll just say this real quick because I'm curious from your perspective if you feel this sometimes. But you talked about how a lot of people that you kind of are working with are service businesses and things like that. I think the hardest thing as a studio owner is like there's always opportunity to do another service, right? And I've sometimes have gone that route, and I've now since have pulled back on certain things. But I think when I found real success was when I just was like, here are the things that we're going to really do well, right? We're not going to be all things to every single person and all these services. We're going to do this one service, and we're going to be known for this one service. Like when people think ads and I'm a brand, they want to think Goodo Studios. And that's all I care about. Like I don't care about anything else, landing page, none of that. Just creative, Goodo. That's it. Those are the two things. And it's kind of the same thing as well. So it's not just about marketing. It's also insider business, which if you think about it, does affect marketing, right? Because then if you're always adding services, you're trying to communicate that out loud, and people are like, what do you do? Like, how do you help people? Like, who are you helping? I don't know. Do you feel that like with your business and like trying to figure out, because people say niche down, but like sometimes niching is not the right word, because it's like, oh, I only help construction businesses. It's like sometimes it's about just your service in general. Like I have one service that I'm helping people with, or like a few smaller services or something.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you bring that up, because it's been a bit of I guess a maturation process for me, right? Like I've been in this space. This is 2 years, a little over 2 years, right? So year one was just like head down, yes to everything, refine the skill set, learn the craft, right? Like just cut my teeth, right? And then year two was a little bit more oriented on like ideal, right? What types of things do I like to do? Which types of things do I not like to do? And then moving beyond that, like I would say even like halfway through last year, it was a matter of like stepping back enough to say, okay, what do I want to be known for? Like you mentioned, right? Like the thing that's synonymous with our brand. What is the thing that when someone thinks of that service or that offering, we're the first thing that pops into their mind. We're the first brand that pops into their head. And for me, I got to that place by recognizing, well, what am I drawn to? If I could create anything, if I could focus on one deliverable forever, what would that be? And it's like creative ads and brand films. And to me, I kind of put them in a category of, again, what I appreciate as a consumer. You know, I'm a big fan of the Harmon Brothers. I really like sandwich video, and like there's humor base, there's wit, but it's always with the intent of communicating value of the product offered, right? It's not just something that's a caricature or sensationalized just for the sake of a laugh. It's always moving the story forward. So for me, it's like that's the type of thing I want to create. Creative ads that are fun, they're engaging, they're entertaining, and then brand films. So kind of like docu-style about us videos. And I spent a lot of time like really making content. It's like, okay, well, what format does well on YouTube? Copy that. What format does well on Facebook? Copy that. And it's like, but I never felt like it was an extension or an expression of me and my creativity. So yeah, peeling all of that off and recognizing that, yeah, it might take some time to start to build this up as the focus, the core offering, and to really get that into like our mantra. Like that's what we do. That's who we are. But that's where I've been, I would say, the last 5 months. And it started internally, right? It's like restructuring core offering and like reformatting, like what is our content schedule going to look like? What type of topics are we going to be speaking on? And it informs everything A to Z. If you know, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And if we stick to this thing and we focus just on this thing, it's unreasonable to think that we won't be the best at that thing. Right. So, yeah, I'm a big, like, Donald Miller, if you confuse, you lose, right? Like if you have everything as an option, you have nothing as an option. And it's helped tremendously to be able to like take a very long, hard, objective look and say, yeah, like all of these things, like they might be like effective for some, but they're not who we are. They're not what we want to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And like you can see how the services or clarifying what you're giving to people also clarifies like how you communicate it to people, which yeah, it takes time to build. And your journey is similar to mine. Like I use year one to year two beyond, like it takes time to build that. So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, of course. That's awesome. It's good to hear. Again, like we mentioned it before, but we're in like, if we're looking at the niche, it's different, right? But I think
For
like
sure.
as a whole, like, we go to the same toolbox, right? Like we use the same tools, and it's kind of like within the same industry. So it's refreshing and exciting to hear there's a lot of overlap, and it's encouraging and it's inspiring again to see some of the work y'all have created and be like, yeah, like there's a congruent approach, right? The output and the end result looks different because it needs to be attached to the brand or to the company or to the ideal consumer. But yeah, the methodology or the modality, if you will, it's very much the same. So like it's all a learning process, right? And as things continue to improve and and we have to continue to iterate. Like there needs to be kind of this agility, I think, like again, refining and improving, but still focusing on the main thing. So with, I guess with that framing of like, you know, we've established that it takes discipline. It takes time to sit and evaluate and maybe even stress test, like what are the core things that we do well? Like what are some challenges that you've seen in being able to stick to that, even when it doesn't seem incredibly promising right at the beginning?
I think the hardest thing is, and this is true for life, is balancing short-term gain versus long-term gain. So I think if you don't understand your business goals long-term, it's really hard to make decisions in the short term. And this is true with marketing. So for example, like when we are working with brands, you know, what are their growth targets? Like where are they actually trying to go? Because if they understand where they're trying to go, they understand how much margin can we give? Can we give a discount? Can we, like, what's our customer acquisition costs? Like what makes this ad like if we don't know those things, like we could run an ad, but we don't know, like, is it successful? Like, how do we make a decision on that? Like, and so if you really know your long-term, it really can help assess and forecast your short-term. And, you know, when it comes to creative, or just being a creative person in your marketing, it still needs to align with finances and business, right? Like if you run out of money, it don't matter how cool your ads are, you ran out of money, right? So the whole goal of a business is to just not run out of money. So they have to align. But I think that's the biggest struggle, is when there's a misalignment of marketing to finances, but mainly the long-term versus the short-term goals. So if those are not well communicated, you know, you could be making decisions on ads and continuing to run ads even if they might be unprofitable. Maybe that's fine if you've raised money, but if you're a bootstrap person, like maybe that's not great, but maybe you have a risk tolerance that you're willing to do that in the short term, right? So it's like there's a different response to that same data for every single business, right? So you just got to know, where are you trying to go? What are your goals? How does that relate in the like short term of 3 to 6 months, a year? And then how do you assess like success of this marketing, this creative, this ad or whatever today? So those are the big things that I think I would just hit on, that I think is like a huge like challenge, because if it's not clear, it's hard to make those decisions.
Yeah, that's really good. It almost kind of gives you the rules of your game. Like,
yep.
you know the boundaries that you're operating within, and that's
100%.
It's not always the most glamorous or exciting thing, but it's required and it's essential, especially to stay in business and not just be something that was a hobby for a short while.
Yeah,
awesome.
Definitely.
Awesome, man. So as we kind of wrap up here, there's something that I'm always, again, I tend to glean things from what I find interesting, right? And I know that, I like to look at it as, again, I curate, right? I take things that I learn from and I fashion them together through my perspective and my lens. So with that, like, I always find it interesting to see what are things that other people are consuming that they find value in, or who are people that you're learning from, either indirectly or directly. What are some areas that you find value, or what are some spaces that you've gone to for either creative inspiration or kind of like marketing insight?
Yeah, I would say there's 2 locations that I go to. One is go to the people that have done it before you. We get caught up in data and all this stuff, but it's like, there are people like David Ogilvy who have been creating ads forever. He's passed, but, back in the day, right? And they had it harder. Think about this. You had to mail in stuff. They got people, their sales letters were so freaking compelling. They got people to straight up give them a check over the mail and send stuff in. the ease of buying was like extremely hard. So the fact that they were able to do that is wild. So look at people from before. I think it's easy, like a lot of stuff out online can feel very tactical. Like you realize like everything that I've said today will be true 10 years from now. I like to speak in very like principle ways or think in principle ways, because who knows what's going to happen? Are we going to be making ads in VR? Like probably, I don't know. Like, you know, like I have no idea, but like, I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about how you principally think about and approach your marketing, things like that. So learning from people that have done it in the past is very, very helpful. So that's one thing. I think people underestimate the value that you can get, even though, yeah, like they don't run Facebook ads. That's fine. That's cool. There's a lot of value in what they were able to do. And the second thing is look outside of your industry. So a lot of times if let's say you're, you know, what would be like, could you like name like an industry like one of your clients is in? Like just name like an industry like that they would be in.
Yeah, recent client, they're in architecture.
Okay, architecture, cool. So like the initial thought is like, what are other architecture people doing? All right, like you're gonna just look the same, right? Similar to the whole AI thing. You look, oh, everybody's got the same thing, right? Like, oh, they're doing the same. They're doing the captions that way. Let's do the captions this way because this part. You're not being original. You're just copying, which is fine at a start. But if you want to stand out, you got to be original. And you're not going to be original by looking at what everybody else is doing. You got to look outside of that. So I always love to find inspiration and then say, how does that relate? What could I take from that to bring in to my place? Like, you know, you don't need to do something crazy like Mr. Beast, but like, interesting how he started that video. You know, like, is there a way to do that? Because nobody in architecture is like excited to talk about architecture, maybe like on videos. Maybe they're very posh or something like that. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know, I'm just kind of giving off, you know, stereotypes there. But my point is like, there's something interesting about like, well, what if you did it in that way? Would that stand out? Would that be original? And not to say that you've got to go and look at the Mr. Beast and say, how do I do Mr. Beast for architecture? But my point is like, look at what other people are doing. And the key thing would be, if you know your consumer, who else are they following that's not in architecture, right? Who else are they following that's not that? Like, what other people do they, what celebrities do they follow? What influencers would they follow? What other types of YouTube channels would they follow? You know, maybe they're into architecture, but they love product design or they love like high-end products, so they watch Marquez Brownlee and tech and all that stuff, right? Whatever. So those are the interesting things. Those, look at the olds and then look at adjacent industries or look at other industries and what they're doing. Try not to copy who's already in your space, because it probably won't. You will just copy. You won't be original. Which, as you know, you got to break the rules to stand out, not just follow the rules.
I love that. Those are not only like gold. I think they're very reasonably applicable, right? Like, there's no excuse to not be able to do those things. So I love them for multiple reasons. That's incredible. Man, Matthew, thanks for taking the time to chat. This has been great. You shared a ton
I'm
of
loving
insight
it.
and wisdom.
I appreciate you having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, so where can people find you? Where's a good place to go to check out some of your work or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Matthew Gattozzi, like on Twitter, LinkedIn, those are the places where I'm sharing the most from my perspective. Then you can check out Goodo Studios. We're revamping our Instagram, so you got to follow there. And we just, as of last night at 9 p.m., we have launched our new website. So we've got a new website up, which I'm excited about. So you can check us out there as well. I've got a newsletter, but you can find that just somewhere on Twitter or LinkedIn, and would love to have you follow around.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thanks for taking the time to chat. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much.